2025 is coming to a close, and that means that once again it's time for me to put together my list of all the best games I played this year. It was harder than ever to decide where to rank everything this time, as there were so many great games that came out over the past 12 months that cover a wide variety of genres and gameplay styles. Obviously, it was a huge year for Nintendo, but the rest of the industry had a ton of fantastic releases as well. To do a quick recap of some of the older games I played in 2025, I spent the first few months of the year with Monster Hunter 4 Ultimate, Generations Ultimate, and Tri, which solidified my total obsession with this series. I also experienced the incredible vibes of Sayonara Wild Hearts, beat a whole bunch of 3DS games for the first time, played through the all-time classic that is Final Fantasy VII, got pulled into a few different indies like Balatro and Hollow Knight, and put about 10 hours into Bloodborne, which I'm absolutely loving so far. Honestly, I played a lot fewer games in my backlog this year than I would have liked, as I was too busy keeping up with the constant stream of new releases. And I still wasn't able to get to a few games I wanted to, like Shinobi Art of Vengeance and Hades 2. In the past year, it's felt like the entire online gaming space has gotten angrier and more sharply opinionated than ever before, which is saying something. So remember that my list is just the opinions of one guy who has some pretty weird tastes in games at times. One quick honorable mention before I get started: Deltarune Chapters 3 and 4 were amazing and would totally be a contender for my favorite game of the year if I was counting them. But since there's still 3 more chapters on the way, I'm going to wait to include it in one of these videos until it's finished. Now let's get into my top 10 games of 2025. It's tough to know where to put Metroid Prime 4 on my list, as it just recently released and I'm still figuring out what I think of it overall. There are some truly great parts of this game, but they're paired with some surprisingly bad stuff that really drags it all down. It starts off quite strong in the first few hours, as even the Federation side characters weren't annoying me too much. But in the final stretch of the game it all starts to sort of fall apart, with a bafflingly bland hunt for green energy crystals and plenty of frustrating story moments that left me feeling pretty mixed as the credits rolled. I think it's safe to say that it's my least favorite Metroid Prime game. So now the question is how far behind it is. Because there are some really great elements like the atmospheric music in certain boss fights, but the lack of enemy variety, strange pacing decisions, uninspired upgrades, lame central desert area, and weak narrative hold it back a lot. It's pretty disappointing in a lot of ways, but I also can't bring myself to dislike it entirely. I'm still glad it finally ended up coming out at all, but it's far from being the grand return for Metroid Prime that I was hoping for.
You should be sitting up straight.
There's no denying that Unbeatable is pretty rough around the edges. I ran into multiple game-breaking glitches during my playthrough, my high scores routinely kept getting deleted, and the writing and pacing are a bit all over the place. But this game's visuals and most importantly its phenomenal soundtrack are still enough to make it a worthwhile experience. Its rhythm-based gameplay style took some getting used to, but it became incredibly fun and satisfying once I got it down. It's easy to see how much passion was put into this game, despite its many unpolished moments. For me, it's almost like an amazing music album that just happens to have a game attached to it, as I've had a lot of these songs on repeat ever since I played the demo. I think in the long run I'll get more enjoyment out of the arcade mode opposed to the story mode, as the music and rhythm sections are what I'm really here for. The soundtrack is genuinely like a 9 or a 10 in my opinion, but I didn't really vibe with the story stuff as much. And hopefully they continue to patch the game in the future so it has less bugs, as that would help a lot. Sword of the Sea comes from the same creative team behind Journey and Abzu, and while it doesn't exactly reinvent that formula, it's still a very enjoyable short adventure through this gorgeous world. Riding around on this sword skateboard hybrid is insanely cool, and I think the visuals speak for themselves. This game isn't very long at all, coming in at just under 3 hours. I enjoy playing something of this length every once in a while, as it's nice to not have to commit too much time to an experience while still getting a lot out of it. It also means the pacing is really great, as it packs all of its creativity into quick sections that never outstay their welcome. Style over substance is usually used as an insult, but sometimes I think it's totally fine to focus on vibes, music, and simple gameplay set pieces. It's not super inventive when it comes to puzzles or platforming, and it didn't leave too big of an impact on me after I beat it. But this game is still highly polished and full of beautiful landscapes, with a fun core movement system that both looks and feels great. $30 is a bit high considering how short it is though, so I'd recommend waiting until this one goes on sale if you're interested. Mario Kart World is a fantastic new entry in the series that goes in a totally new direction with its huge interconnected map and massive amount of characters and costumes. And while it didn't totally stick the landing for me, I still really appreciate the desire to change things up after 8 Deluxe essentially perfected the old style of kart racing. The new moves like wall riding and rail grinding add a ton of depth and player expression to the gameplay, and I still feel like I've only scratched the surface of what's possible in terms of skips and shortcuts. The intermission tracks can be a bit simple and often a lot less interesting than the normal courses are, but it's almost worth it to get the terrific new side mode that is Knockout Tour. Racing across the map without stopping is so energetic and chaotic, although I understand why many people miss the normal 3-lap structure. I actually really enjoyed driving around in free roam for a while, despite there not being a whole lot of meaningful content outside of P-Switch missions and Peach coins. This game is far too expensive for what it offers, but it was a very fun launch title for the Switch 2 that I had a blast playing. And it has a soundtrack full of absolute bangers as well. Fantasy Life I, The Girl Who Steals Time is a great sequel to the 3DS original, capturing the spirit of what made that game so good while also throwing in a whole bunch of new stuff that probably shouldn't work but somehow does. You can build and customize your own town like in Animal Crossing, and spend time exploring a big open world full of shrines like in Zelda. Now neither of these elements are as high quality as the franchises they're taken from are, but playing one game that's doing so much at once is impressive in its own way, and the best part is that these sections of the game are just an addition to a relatively straightforward follow-up to the first game, with all the life sim jobs, witty writing, and quest lines you could ever want. I know a lot of people use the word addicting to describe games like this, but I really was hooked on this game for a solid few weeks. I recognize that it isn't exactly the peak of the video game medium or anything, but I genuinely loved my time with this game and can recommend it to anyone who's a fan of collecting, crafting, fishing, mining, farming, cooking, woodcutting, or, well, I think you get it. I wasn't expecting to like Kirby Air Riders as much as I did. I had never played the GameCube original, so it took me a while to warm up to this game's strange style of controls and fast pacing. But it did all eventually click into place, making this one of my favorite experiences on the Switch 2 so far. It's an arcade racing game, multiplayer party hangout space, and character-focused fighting game all at once, with an amazing soundtrack and overall level of polish. City Trial is a super fun and distinct side mode that I ended up spending more time with than the main air ride races, thanks to its high replayability and constant frenetic action. And the paddock lobby system is the perfect way to play online matches with friends. The road trip single-player content was a great way to learn the basics of the gameplay, although I'm not really sure I'll put much more time into it in the future. There's a huge amount of customization here, from the player-created designs to getting your own garage to show off your favorite machines. Air Riders is one of the best examples of a game that's simple to get into but hard to master, as it feels like there's a near-endless skill ceiling if you really put in the time to maximizing your stats and builds. This game also has Starman, so what else do I really have to say? Clair Obscur Expedition 33 is an incredibly impressive debut game from Sandfall Interactive, with a satisfying timing-focused turn-based combat system and a strong narrative that really hits hard at the end. There are so many stunning environments and memorable boss fights, with great voice acting performances and plenty of story twists that I genuinely didn't see coming. Stringing together a set of successful parries always feels amazing, and learning the best ways to maximize damage with each character was a lot of fun. While it is a very beautiful game, there were times where I didn't totally love the way it looks. I think it can be sort of muddy and visually busy in certain areas, and the motion capture and lip syncing felt pretty uncanny at times. But I did eventually get used to it and got very emotionally invested in the final few hours of the story. I think it just took a bit too long to get there. I completely understand why this game resonated with so many people and became their favorite game of the year, as it excels in so many different ways with unique and impactful themes centered around art and grief. Although it didn't land perfectly with me, I still really enjoyed my time with this game and I'm not at all surprised by how successful it's been. Monster Hunter Wilds is far from being the best in the series due to a variety of problems, but it still managed to be one of the most enjoyable and engrossing experiences of the year for me. This loop of hunting monsters and building gear is quite possibly my favorite gameplay hook of all time, as it truly never gets old no matter how many of these fantastical beasts I take down. Wilds streamlines a lot of the rough edges of past games, which ends up making the game less interesting and engaging as a result. Hunts are shorter, easier, and less challenging than ever before, with additions like the wounding system giving the player far too much power. There are about 1,000 other tiny things I could complain about, but when I'm facing off against a larger-than-life monster in a dance of avoiding and attacking as an incredible musical theme plays behind me, those problems disappear for a brief, beautiful moment. This game is full of extreme highs and frustrating lows, making it difficult to figure out how I feel about it overall. I put more hours into this game than any other this year, and in many ways it's the game I enjoyed the most. But it's also the one I have the most criticisms for, which is just as confusing as it sounds. At the end of the day, I can't help but love this game for everything it gets right, and to help me realize just how passionate I am about this series. Donkey Kong Bonanza is a triumphant return from one of Nintendo's oldest characters, delivering a fantastic 3D platforming adventure that's full of punching and smashing. In many ways, it feels like a spiritual successor to Mario Odyssey, with that same sense of expressive movement and colorful optimism that made it an absolute joy to play through. DK feels heavy and impactful to control, and being able to destroy everything around you is such a cool twist on the genre. Although it plays very differently than most other platformers, it still has that sense of rhythm and flow when you get in the zone. This game is a true collectathon, with tons of little things to grab and search for as you decimate anything in your path. The Bonanza power-ups add an extra layer of fun game design that keeps things interesting, and each layer has its own set of unique mechanics and charming characters to interact with. While perhaps not reaching the same heights as Mario's 3D games, Bonanza is still a fantastic game that pays tribute to the DK series while also doing something entirely new and different. There was a solid stretch of time where I was convinced that this would end up being my game of the year, as it represents so much of what I love about Nintendo games. And while it didn't end up making it to the very top of my list, it's still an outstanding experience that I loved nearly every second of. I was often in awe of Hollow Knight Silksong as I played it. Everything about it, from its impressive hand-drawn visuals to the heavenly soundtrack of each area, continually impressed and inspired me. After finally connecting with the first Hollow Knight earlier in the year, I found Silksong especially impressive in the way that it differs from the original while still feeling like a cohesive sequel. Hornet's moveset is just different enough to make things fresh and exciting, with her diagonal down attack being one of the most satisfying moves to master in any video game. Almost every boss fight became a new favorite, and each new massive section of the map I found was both thrilling and daunting. This game is incredibly difficult and punishing, which is usually something that I don't really love. But for whatever reason, this game was able to motivate me to keep going, even when I was trying the same boss for the 10th time in a row. Each death just made me want to try again, knowing exactly what I needed to do differently in order to survive my next attempt. This game feels like the most complete and consistently high-quality release of the year, and the fact that it came from such a small team and was sold for only $20 at a time when gaming is becoming more expensive than ever before is just the cherry on top. Even though there were moments when I almost stopped playing because I didn't know if I could endure its intense level of challenge, it somehow always managed to get me to push past that next difficult obstacle that was in my path. And that's exactly what I needed in my life at the time. I think this game is a true work of art, and it's my pick for the best game of 2025. And that's my list of the best games I played this year. I really enjoyed playing through all of these great games, even though a lot of them stumbled in a few places. None of these games were completely perfect, but I loved how ambitious and exciting they all felt. It's hard to believe that the Switch 2 finally ended up coming out, and that the launch window is now behind us. I know there's a lot of doom and gloom around Nintendo right now, and there are definitely a lot of things to be concerned about, but I still think the future will end up giving us some pretty amazing experiences with the new hardware. I always enjoy looking back at the games I played at the end of each year, as it acts as a nice way to try and get some closure every December. And if you want to see what games I'm playing throughout the year, I do have a backlogged account that I try to keep pretty up to date that I'll link in the description. As always, I want to say thanks to everyone out there who watches and supports the videos I put out, as it means a lot to me. I think creating videos will always be a part of who I am, and I hope to keep making them for a long while. I'll see you all in 2026, the year of Tomodachi Life's glorious return to the spotlight. And if this game isn't literally perfect, I'm going to become one of those channels that just hates everything.